Hey guys, it's Nick. I got another deck video for you. Today I want to talk about some railing. There's a lot of different railing options out there, and there's a lot of different ways to install it. I'm going to give you 3 examples. These are the most common, usually what you'll run into. Let's start with option B, actually. If you got an older deck, this is probably what you're going to see, which is a post on the outside of your deck. Sometimes they'll get fancy and they'll do a little 45 at the bottom there, and then your railing sits up here. It's kind of hard to record this while I'm drawing, but that's the rough idea. And then they've got a carriage bolt running through, sometimes 2. That's pretty standard on older decks, 15, 20 years old. That's what you're usually going to see. There's an advantage and a disadvantage to this system. The advantage is that it's really hard to get water damage in your fastener holes, because that water tends to just roll off that. And you're probably going to get some of it that wicks into that hole, but very few and far between. The disadvantage is that you have a structural piece, which is your railing. So if you have toddlers or drunk friends, they're gonna, this becomes a weak point, right? And it's only anchored into your rim joist. Your rim joist is kind of cosmetic. It's structural in a sense, but it's only fastened to the very ends of your joists. So this is a failure point right here. You're not getting water damage, but you're fastening a structural piece to a weak point. Option A, which is what you see a lot of now, is a post with a base plate fastened directly on top of the deck. So pros and cons again. This is usually a little stronger than this option, because you're actually usually you'll block out behind that rim joist and then fasten in the rim joist as well, so that post is anchored in several different places. The failure point here though is water. So if it's a base plate and you're mounted on top of your decking, your failure point is actually water getting in and down, and it's going to sit right inside those screw holes, and it's got nowhere to go. So over time, this material and this material are going to rot out. This is the cheapest and the fastest way to install a post these days. Typically you'll see this with steel. Most steel post systems come with a flange on the bottom for that purpose. So it's cheap and it's quick, but it gets rid of this failure point, but it creates another failure point. There's another option which I like, and you can do it with pretty much any material. I prefer steel, but I'm going to install a post here and run it all the way through the deck like that, except straight. So I get the advantage of this, where water tends to roll off, but I also get the advantage of this, which is that post is not just anchored to the rim joist, it's anchored to other parts of the deck as well. So when I run that post all the way through the deck, my water is inclined to wick down. And then I'm going to run a carriage bolt through the main system. And some of that water is probably going to wick into this hole, but very few and far between. So the advantage here is that my water is getting wicked out, and I'm also not just anchored to my rim joist. So in order to do this system, I'm using steel. You can do the same setup with wood or with vinyl, or composite actually for that matter. So it's really hard to draw while I'm recording. So if this is the upper level of my deck, if you're doing composite or vinyl, you'll have a wood post all the way through, and then a piece of composite or vinyl sleeved over the top. So that piece just sits on the top of the deck. But your wood post is what's actually anchored into the system, if that makes sense. I'm using steel on this job. I've done plenty of jobs with wood sleeved with composite or vinyl. It's the same process. I don't like vinyl. Vinyl A vinyl sleeved post is the same as a composite sleeve post, but I don't like vinyl railing or composite railing. They're weak points, and like I said, if you're on a second story deck and you have toddlers or drunk friends, you don't want your railing to fail on you, because that's going to be a really bad day for everyone. So you can do it that way though. What I prefer to do is a wood post sleeved with composite but with steel railing, if that makes sense. Either way, I'm going to go with option C. I'm going to run that post all the way through the deck. I'm going to anchor it into the rim joist and to a piece of blocking behind it. The other part of the problem with option A is that you have this sandwich right here, which is either composite or wood or whatever your decking material is, and you're going through 1, 2, 3 pieces of material with a 2-inch fastener, and you're also inviting a water entry point right there underneath that flange. This way you're still going to have a flange or a skirt, and you're still going to get water underneath it, but it's inclined to move out of the system. So I go with option C. I'm going to show you the underside real quick, hop up on top just so you can see what I'm doing, and then I'll show you the process. I guess before I start that, the other key ingredient here, my post is 3 inches, but the span between my blocking is about 3 1/32. So I'm going just a half a tick mark over 3 inches, and I'll show you why that's important. But I actually do leave a gap here intentionally, so I'll show you why that's important. Let me run up topside though, and I'll show you the bottom of this real quick. So I got a post set up in here, right? This shim is kind of why that's important, and I'll show you that again from the top side. But there's my piece of blocking. I got 2 screws in there temporarily. I'm going to put a carriage bolt in there eventually, but for right now I just got a couple screws to hold it in place. Let me run up topside and show you what I'm looking at, and I guess after that I'll pause my video and show you how to actually install that. Alright, on top side, I didn't actually post the video of this, but I did get my stair system installed. It was kind of a nightmare, but it turned out well. Now this is the post we were just looking at. So you'll remember that I have a shim on the underside of that as well. You might be able to see, yeah. There's a shim on the underside, and there's a shim on the top side. That's why I leave that extra space on the blocking, so that I can adjust this post not just left to right, but back and forth as well. This post has already been placed. There you go. It's already been placed, but I left my levels on there just so you could see it. I've got a very small shim in there. Really not a lot, right? That's already been set. I left my levels on there just so you could see it. This is the next post on the line. So we'll start working on that guy next. Another thing to think about too when you're drilling through your deck like that, you want to oversize what you cut out of the composite. Leave your wood framing tight. Obviously I'm tight up to my wood, but I'm taking out more composite than I need to. The reason for that is that when I actually fasten this post, if it's pressing up against that composite material, it's going to knock it out of level or potentially compress your decking, either way. So remove more composite material than you actually need, and that gives you play to adjust it left to right, back and forth, etc., etc. And then when you're all said and done, there's a post skirt that will go over this. So obviously I took out a ton of composite material. You don't need to be very picky about that cut because it will get covered. So after this is completely fastened and I get all my railing in, there's a post skirt that, yeah, you get the idea. That post skirt's going to cover all that sloppy cutting. So honestly, you don't need to be super precise on that cut. In fact, probably get a little carried away. Get that composite material well out of your way because it'll give you more space to work with that post, just to level it. I've got blocking behind this and I needed a pretty healthy shim just to get it level. So I'm glad that I took out all that composite material because now it's wood onto metal, you know. I think that's it for top side. I guess since my last video I did get all my picture frames installed, all that good stuff. Stair system is, this will probably be the last thing I finish, but it's usable for now. It's pretty cool actually. So let's come over here and show you my process. This is the post that I just pulled my big level off of. After I get it dropped into place, I'm using 2 sheet metal screws to hold that post level left to right temporarily. Eventually I'm going to run a carriage bolt through here, and I've already marked out where my carriage bolt is going to go, but for now I just need to hold it. Once you start drilling in that carriage bolt, that post is going to want to vibrate on you and move out of level. So just use those 2 screws to hold it in place temporarily. This is anticipation of a carriage bolt. I got the same thing over here. So I'm doing 1, 2, 3 on this corner post. Let me show you. I guess I'll pause that real quick and I'll grab some hardware, show you how that works when it's installed. Alright, so those are the screws I'm using to fasten it temporarily. It's a self-tapper, but it's designed to fasten wood into metal. It will tap on the end and it catches itself inside the metal. So you can see that's what I got in there. You do have to pre-drill the wood, but it holds pretty well. It's not rock solid, like that post still has some play in it, but it's not designed to be rock solid. It's just designed to hold it in place until I get a carriage bolt in it. The reason I've got that 2-inch hole drilled in there with a Forstner bit is for this gadget, which will sit in there. These are actually pretty cool pieces of hardware. They're cheap too. What they do is hold that square hole is going to lock into that carriage bolt. I'm using carriage bolts because the head is lower profile. I don't want a hex bolt sticking out because I gotta put fascia up here as well. And that hex bolt is gonna interfere with my fascia. So I need a carriage bolt. I need it recessed into that rim joist, but I also don't want to remove so much material that I compromise the strength of the post or the rim joist. So these are pretty cool pieces of hardware. You can pound them in with a sledge when you get to that point. And you'll run, that's pre-drilled, but I'll run a 1/2 inch hole through there and drive my carriage bolt into it with that washer on the inside, and then on this back side I'll be going through 6 inches of material and lock them all in. So that's kind of the hardware setup. So back to my little sketch here. When we're doing option C, we've got a carriage bolt that cannot spin out because it's locked into the rim joist, right? It's also anchored into the deck. Put a lock washer, a washer, and a nut on the back. That's not going to go anywhere. And any water that you get underneath that skirt is just going to drain out anyways, because you're intentionally leaving this 1/32 of a gap anyways. I hope that helped. If you guys have questions, drop me a message.